This episode is made possible by the realistic online game War Thunder. Check out this game through the link in the description below. Going through that link not only supports this show, but you also get a free premium tank, aircraft, or ship, and 3 days of account boost as a bonus. And let's get into it. Although the exact etymology is a bit murky, the word vandalism is indelibly associated with an East Germanic tribe best known for the sacking of Rome in 455 AD. The Vandals, not unlike the Celts and other nomadic people in Europe, failed to chronicle most of their records. As a result, Roman scribes typically labeled them barbarians, as did later ecclesiastical accounts, providing yet another example of how the winning side writes the history. Recent archaeological discoveries have challenged previously held notions about Vandals being merely uncivilized brutes. That said, let's take a look at this much maligned group who may or may not have torched a few chariots and tossed eggs at Roman soldiers. What's your name? The ancient author Pliny the Elder provides the earliest mention of the Vandals in his tome Naturalis Historia. He used the broad term Vandili in 77 AD to describe one of the major groupings of Germanic tribes found on the outskirts of the Roman Empire. As a word of caution, labels such as Germanic can be misleading, as they could imply a national identity that didn't exist. Moreover, tribes from the region were just as likely to attack each other as they were the Romans. Even the word tribe can be a bit problematic as well, because these groups comprised of various constituents within a confederation sharing the same cultural practices and language. The name may also stem from the German word Vand, which means to wander. Lastly, a connection is possible to those living in Vendel, a province in upland Sweden where the Vandals most likely originated. On the go. Around 130 BC, the Vandals embarked on a long migration that started in the frigid tundra of Scandinavia and ended up in sun-baked North Africa. The meandering route also included a stopover in Silesia, which is modern-day Poland. Along the way, the tribe divided into two separate factions, the Salingi and the Hasdingi, before continuing southward. The nomads began arriving on the outer borders of the Roman Empire during the 2nd century AD and participated in several clashes along the Danube, including the Marcomannic Wars. They gradually became more adept in the art of warfare while invading new lands. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius would later grant them the right to settle in the territory of Dacia, modern-day Romania, in exchange for their martial skill as mercenaries, especially as horsemen. Constantine the Great later employed a similar strategy in other long-forgotten Roman provinces such as Pannonia, Noricum, and Raetia. The late 4th century saw the Huns accelerate their rampage across Central Europe, pushing other barbarian groups further south and west towards Rome. The Vandals fought their way across the Rhine into Gaul before moving into the Iberian Peninsula. Finally, under the leadership of their dynamic and vastly underrated king Gaiseric, more on him a bit later, they settled in North Africa. Friend or foe? The story of the Vandals reveals an eventful rise and fall before rather abruptly fading into obscurity. In a span covering roughly 6 centuries, they found themselves as both the conquered and the conqueror, making alliances and sworn enemies that involved more subplot twists than the Godfather trilogy. The Vandals and the Visigoths clashed frequently, despite hailing from roughly the same area as the Visigoths. Goths means of German culture. They also followed similar migratory paths, but that particular beef is only a small part of the picture. Here's a handy cheat sheet of their many foes and friends. Alemanni, friend. Burgundians, friend. Byzantines, foe. Huns, foe. Maniots, foe. Marcomanni, friend. Moors, foe. Romans, friend and foe. Suevi, foe. Visigoths, foe. So just before we get into the rest of today's video, I do want to say that it's brought to you by War Thunder. The best way for me to show you their game is to jump over to the computer, so let's do that. Okay everybody, welcome to War Thunder. Just in case you couldn't tell, this is a military vehicle combat game. You play online. I'm playing on PC, but you can play PS4, Xbox One, however you like. It's cross-platform. In this game, you get a play in 1,500 tanks, aircraft, helicopters, ships from the 1930s to the 1990s. Pop them off. Come on, come on, come on. Easy. Oh, there's another one I didn't notice. Oh! Critical hit. Come on, come on. Let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. Let's do it. Oh, we got 2 hits and he's still alive. No. Come on. There's 3 of them. Oh, I've made a huge tactical error. Get after him. Come on. Okay, let's... Oh, no, I'm in big trouble now. Oh, I got like 3 of them. That ain't bad. Let's just back up a little there. Critical hit. Come on. Oh, well, someone took that kill, but I'll take it. I got a kill assist.
It's not a critical hit. That's not a critical hit. Tanks, face, turret, yes. That's a kill for the whistle boy. Just while we reposition ourselves. You can play a lot of different modes in this game. Arcade is just for kind of quick combat action. Realistic, if you like a bit of a challenge, or a simulator if you like getting your ass kicked. They describe it here in the notes as unrivaled realism. I describe it as, you know, just getting destroyed constantly. That's a hit. Oh, mission accomplished. So what I was going to say is that you can get a free premium aircraft, tank, or ship, 3 days of account boost as a bonus, and all you need to do is just click the link below, and let's get back to the video.
We say nay, you say heresy. As Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire in the early 4th century, the Vandals practiced a non-Trinitarian Christological doctrine called Arianism. The movement, based on the teachings of a priest from Alexandria named Arius, would later be branded as heresy by the Church in Rome. The controversy began when Arius challenged the notion of the Holy Trinity. He contended that if Jesus, as the Son of God, was created by the Father, then he was, therefore, neither co-eternal nor consubstantial. In other words, the boy from Nazareth didn't hold as much weight as the man upstairs. The debate presented a significant crisis for the early church, prompting Constantine the Great to intervene in 325 AD by summoning the First Council of Nicaea. Constantine, who later became the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity, well, sort of, presided over the landmark discussions. The gathering of over 200 bishops deemed Arianism heretical and enshrined the divinity of Christ in a statement of faith known as the Nicene Creed. Regardless, the Vandals and other new arrivals to the Roman Empire held steadfast in their beliefs, a position that would perpetuate their legacy as unruly heathens. It's worth noting that Constantine boiled his wife to death and killed his son, but still emerged as the Great One in the eyes of the Church. Go figure. Arianism, like many cults, would gradually fizzle out over time. However, rejection of the Trinity by Christian denominations is still prevalent today, most notably by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Jehovah's Witnesses. The King's Kingdom. At its peak, the Vandal realm encompassed a long stretch of North Africa, covering what is now modern-day Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, and Libya. They made the historic city of Carthage its capital, establishing a strong strategic position along the Mediterranean coast that allowed them to take control of Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, Mallorca, Malta, and Ibiza. The ascension of King Gaiseric to the throne in 428 AD marked a significant turning point in the Vandals' rise to prominence. The nomadic tribe had been living in the Roman province of Hispania Baetica, where several bloody battles against the Visigoths had taken its toll. Gaiseric chose to pack up and move again, but this time to a region mired in chaos and dissent, and therefore vulnerable to invasion. The crafty leader took his army across the Strait of Gibraltar and set his sights on Roman-controlled North Africa. Beginning in 430, he won a series of battles in the provinces of Numidia and Mauritania against forces led by Bonifacius, a Roman general and governor of the Diocese of Africa. The fighting included laying siege to the ancient walled city of Hippo Regius that resulted in the death of its renowned Christian bishop, St. Augustine. As Gaiseric's empire grew, he also built a powerful fleet of ships to wreak havoc with seaborne raids along the coastline. The Romans, now fearful of the upstart's new power, hoped to appease them by negotiating a succession of treaties and accepting Genseric as the head of proconsular Africa. After centuries on the move, the Germanic tribe finally had secured a homeland. Sackimus Maximus. The much ballyhooed sacking of Rome would primarily come to define the Vandals' place in history. In the mid-440s, the emperor of the Western Roman Empire, Valentinian III, attempted to strengthen Rome's Vandalic alliance by betrothing his youngest daughter, Eudocia, to King Gaiseric's son, Huneric. However, any hope of a mutually beneficial union and happy marriage soon went up in smoke. A power-hungry and wealthy senator named Petronius Maximus plotted a coup against Valentinian. Adding to the drama, the sitting emperor had previously raped his wife. The vengeful Maximus waited for the stars to align and had his venal rival whacked, causing all hell to break loose. The new ruler then forced Valentinian's widow, the Empress Licenia Eudoxia, to marry him, and decreed that his son, Palladius, would now marry Eudocia. Meanwhile, Gaiseric sensed an opportunity to exploit the imperial discord. He declared all treaties with the Eternal City as null and void and prepared to march on Rome. Facing imminent ruin, the Romans sent Pope Leo I to plead for mercy. The papacy still viewed the Vandals as heretics, but the pragmatic Gaiseric agreed not to destroy the city or slaughter its people in exchange for unlimited plunder. And for the next fortnight, plunder they did. The invaders confiscated anything of value, even stripping gold leaf from the roof of the Capitoline temple. Exhausted from their wanton binge, the victors sailed home to Carthage loaded with loot, taking with them the former empress and her daughters. As for the fate of Sackimus Maximus, an angry Roman mob stoned him to death outside the city when he tried to flee. His doomed reign had lasted a mere 6 weeks. The robber got robbed. After fleecing Rome, Gaiseric's legacy would be later ransacked in one of the greatest historical ironies ever. The man who built a mighty empire, reigned 50 years, and never lost to the Romans, became a mere walking shadow on history's global stage. Meanwhile, his contemporary Attila the Hun continues to bask in eternal infamy. Nearly every list of the top military leaders of all time includes the ruthless Hun. Dubbed as the Scourge of God, legend has it that his wrath not only spread fear on 2 continents, but the grass never grew on the spot where his horse had trod. Although most tyrants are guilty of touting alternative facts, the diminutive despot routinely comes up short next to the Genseric. First of all, the Hunnic Empire, although much bigger than the Vandals, wasn't exactly high-end beachfront real estate. Most of Attila's villas stood in large swaths of harsh, uninhabitable terrain, including all of Kazakhstan. Meanwhile, Gaiseric held court over the choicest spots in the Mediterranean, where centuries later crowds still flock to the cool sea breeze and inviting warm sand. Furthermore, the Romans and Visigoths combined to defeat the Huns in 451 AD. Attila died 2 years later at the age of 43 after choking to death on his blood while in a drunken stupor, and on his wedding night no less. For those keeping score, Gaiseric lived to the ripe old age of 88. Nothing lasts forever. Between 460 and 475 AD, Roman forces attempted to reclaim their influence in North Africa and unseat Gaiseric from power. They failed. Miserably. The Vandal king's shrewd military tactics, not to mention his cunning, uniqueness, nerve, and talent, allowed him to thwart all comers. But his death in 477 of natural causes, rare in those stabby times, would lead to a rapid decline from which the Vandals would not recover. Gaiseric's oldest son, Huneric, inherited the throne from his father but never managed to fill the old man's shoes. The kingdom would suffer from a string of internal conflicts that would hasten its demise. Eventually, the Eastern Roman Emperor Justinian I made expelling the Vandals his top priority. In 533, Carthage fell and forced Gelimer, the last Vandal king, into exile. On a more positive note, the 1980s California punk band The Vandals took inspiration from the ancient group and is still going strong to this day. So I really hope you found that video interesting. Please do support this show by checking out our fantastic sponsor War Thunder for that free tank, aircraft, or ship and 3 days of account boost. Link below, and thank you for watching.